Here's the battle of two highly anticipated Ultras of 2024. We're comparing the Xiaomi 14 Ultra that was released recently and the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra that was released nearly about like 2 months ago. Ooh, time really flies. I'm only gonna compare it in a few different aspects, mostly focusing around the cameras, which we will talk about it at the last, but everything is timestamped down below so you can skip to whichever section that you want to watch the most. So let's start with the screens of these two phones first. These two phones have similar sizes but at a different aspect ratio. The Xiaomi 14 Ultra uses a 6.73-inch screen with rounded corners and also curved up from the frame, whereby the Galaxy S24 Ultra comes with a 6.8-inch screen that has a completely flat screen with square edges. The resolution of these screens are also very similar and both can go up to 120Hz refresh rate as well. Using our colorimeter to test these screens, both of them will cover nearly 100% of sRGB and DCI-P3 color gamuts when we use it in the most vivid color profile ever. However, the maximum brightness on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is only at around 1018 nits, whereby the S24 Ultra can go up to 1350 nits brightness maximum. We are not even going to talk about the anti-reflective properties on the S24 Ultra's screen because when we put on a tempered glass screen protector, the anti-reflective property just disappears. And I am personally someone who uses tempered glass on any screens that I use, so yeah. The battery life is also something that we need to highlight. Since both of these phones are using the same chipset, same rated battery capacity, same screen refresh rate, and also at a similar resolution, then they should have a very similar battery life, right? Turns out, no. Using our standardized battery life test, the Xiaomi 14 Ultra only lasts for about 13 hours. I did the test twice, and the result is within margin of error. It seems like the Xiaomi 14 Ultra has some sort of battery bug that caused its battery to be drained much quicker compared to any other phones. The S24 Ultra, on the other hand, can last for 15 hours in the same test, and even the small Xiaomi 14 lasts for 14 hours and 40 minutes, which is, again, drastically better than the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. Hopefully, Xiaomi can fix this issue on the 14 Ultra quickly as well. Speaking of that, let's now quickly talk about the software. I know this is a personal preference, but I still want to go through it. And the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is now using HyperOS, which is pretty much just a rebranded MIUI. They do tout a few upgrades here and there, but generally speaking, it just feels more or less the same to me. The S24 Ultra is using OneUI 6.1, and personally, I do prefer this a lot more. The built-in apps like Samsung Wallet, Edge Panel, Moods and Routines are just really wonderful, and I use them from day to day. Since I use them, I don't consider them to be bloatware, so there's that. The software update policy between these two phones are also very different. The Xiaomi 14 Ultra will offer 4 generations of Android OS upgrades and 5 years of security patches, whereby the S24 Ultra goes for 7 years on both Android OS upgrades and also 7 years of security patches. So that also directly impacts the final retail price of these two phones, but if you're buying these two phones, then I don't think the price will be much of a problem, right? Yeah. So now let's move on to the charging speed. Xiaomi comes with a proprietary 90-watt charger in the box, and when we do enable the boost charging speed option in the settings menu, it can charge from 15% to completion in about 35 minutes only, but of course it's gonna be hot. The S24 Ultra doesn't even have a charger included in the box, and it will take in 45 watts of USB PD PPS charging and can charge from 15% to completion in about 65 minutes. This is an obvious win for Xiaomi's part, but I don't like any sort of proprietary fast charging standards. Come on now, that 90-watt charger can't even charge my laptop that uses a 65 watts charger. But somehow my USB PD PPS charger can charge both my laptop and the phone at full speeds, so it's a much more open standard. And now it is time for the cameras. The specs of these two phones' cameras are listed on the screen here. They both come with 4 cameras with very similar focal lengths, but the camera sensor sizes are different. However, specs alone do not dictate the image quality. We'll split the camera comparison into each category, so let's get started with the main cameras first. Both these phones can obviously take good pictures when we look at it in isolation. However, when we put them side by side, it is clear that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra has some weird white balance issue. Sometimes it's very blue, but sometimes it's way too yellow. But sometimes both these phones will take very similar looking pictures. One thing I realized is that Xiaomi also cranked up the contrast a lot more, and since like this just looks, I don't know, fiercer? Is that the right way to describe it? Anyway, this statue looks great on both, but I do think that Xiaomi looks better in this case. For this night shot, I once again like Xiaomi's processing more, though the contrast is a bit too much and the statue just became very yellowish kind of golden color. The S24 Ultra is much more accurate in terms of color, and in this shot though, the S24 managed to balance out the bright signboard, but the overall shots just look not as good as the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. The ultra-wide angle camera are drastically different on both of these phones. The pictures look a lot more dramatic on the S24 Ultra as it is much darker and has higher contrast, but it also managed to capture better colors around the sides, like this picture here. The tree in the picture taken by the Xiaomi 14 Ultra just doesn't look good. It looks kind of lifeless, more like. Surprisingly, night shots look much better on the S24 Ultra, so you can have a look on the screen here. Now it's time for the 3x telephoto camera. It's not really 3x on both of these phones since the focal lengths are slightly different, and I think they just look very similar, but the Xiaomi 14 Ultra has a bit more contrast to make the colors pop out a bit more, whereby the S24 Ultra looks a bit more dull in comparison. Both of these phones do take very similar pictures when compared side by side, but for night shots in particular, I do think the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is slightly better since they don't over sharpen the picture. For the 5x telephoto camera, it's pretty much the same story as the 3x telephoto camera. The colors will pop out a lot more on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra because they have bumped up the contrast. However, when we move on to the indoor shots, the difference will start to show. The Xiaomi 14 Ultra takes a much darker picture and it is also rather blurry, whereby the S24 Ultra is brighter and also is a tad bit over sharpened. Then comes the night shots. I think this is just looking better on the S24 Ultra, and this is mainly because the S24 Ultra has better stabilization compared to the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. It's much more obvious when we move on to the 100x zoom. Both these phones have similar AI enhancement features to ensure zoom shots look good, and they also have that zoom lock feature. Samsung introduced this since the S20 Ultra and has improved on this feature since then, and it just is a lot easier if you want to take 100x zoom shots with this phone. The Xiaomi 14 Ultra also has the same feature, but for some reason it is just not stable. Once the zoom lock kicks in, a little movement from my finger will cause the entire viewfinder to drift away. And I think this is because the Xiaomi 14 Ultra stabilization is just not good, and that's why when I take these zoom shots here, yeah, it just looks not good. The S24 Ultra just cleans up the image a lot better in comparison. What about text then? Well, the same story applies actually. I get a more consistent result with the S24 Ultra when I just point and shoot at something with 100x zoom, and for the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, I took many of the same pictures and the same thing happens. It is just not stable and very blurry. But for some reason, some of those 100x zoom shots actually look good, so I don't know what's happening. For the selfie cameras, well, I'm not really a selfie guy, so let me just show you one picture right here and let you judge for yourselves. Since we are taking the pictures in Leica Vibrant mode for all this while, what about Leica Authentic in comparison? I took a picture of these rows with Leica Vibrant and it looks absolutely horrible, honestly speaking. And so I switched over to Leica Authentic and all of a sudden it looks a lot better in comparison. And throughout my usage, I think that the Leica Authentic offers a lot more dramatic look in my opinion. It's only better in certain scenarios if you want to take a picture of someone, for example, because the vignette effect around the four corners is just a bit too extreme for Leica Authentic. As for videography, both of these phones can also take videos of up to 8K 30fps or 4K 60fps, and both of them can also switch between all four cameras while we are filming in 4K 60fps mode. So that's a great feature to have in these kind of phones. So I took both of these phones, mounted onto my rig, and then filmed this video at night. And I immediately realized that the Xiaomi 14 Ultra is aggressively trying to fix the white balance. In reality, those lights are much more yellow in color, but Xiaomi just made them white color. I also realized that Xiaomi opted for a much lower ISO, which resulted in a super dark video but with less noise. However, Samsung's stabilization is a lot better here, and it doesn't have any jitters like the 14 Ultra, so I won't get any motion sickness. But the amount of noise on the S24 Ultra, that's insane. Now let's also talk a bit more about its design. Personally, I do love the PU leather material on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra since it feels nice to touch and also just plain looks better. But I am not a fan of that camera bump. It's too big, too thick, and there is no reason to have one big glass covering all of the cameras. That middle part in between all of the 4 cameras is just wasted space. I like the S24 Ultra's minimalist look. It's clean, simple, and the camera is out of the way, and it just doesn't have any big fancy camera bump design. A few more things that I want to speed run through before we end this comparison. Both of these phones will have a USB 3 port at the bottom, and they copy files in and out really quickly, though the Xiaomi 14 Ultra has a USB 3.2 Gen 2 port with 10 gigabits speed, whereby the S24 Ultra has a USB 3.2 Gen 1 port at only 5 gigabits per second speed. Both of them can output to a display via its USB-C port, and Samsung has Samsung DeX, which is a staple in the Galaxy S series right now, whereby Xiaomi just merely mirrors the display. Both phones are also rated for IP68 rating, and they both have dual SIM card slots, but there is no microSD card support and no audio jack. And so that's all that we have to share with you in this comparison here. I do think that both of these phones have their own sets of pros and cons, so do let me know, will you go for the Xiaomi 14 Ultra or the Galaxy S24 Ultra? Do let us know which phone you will pick down in the comment section below, and also let us know why, because I'm really curious to know what you guys think about these two phones. And that's it. We'll see you guys in the next video.